Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming. We're two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything, decided to talk about games with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And on this episode, we are continuing our dive into some smaller game alternatives that maybe don't get the attention that we think they deserve. With, just from time to time, jumping into stuff that we enjoy and think is cool and is worth sharing, especially in regards to some of the stuff going on in the hobby. People were asking for what we think is worth our time outside of the big stuff. And today, we are going to dive into a game system that I personally own, and that if you aren't into it off the rip, I don't know how else to convince you. Because it's a cool samurai monster hunting game called Hametsu.
Yeah.
Look at the art. Just look at this art.
If you look at that art and aren't like, hell yeah, then you're probably not going to enjoy this game.
It's probably not for you, man. And that's cool. That's fine. But it is for me. And obviously, I bought it, so I'm into it. But I actually think, much like Rangers of Shadow Deep, it occupies an interesting niche in the wargaming sphere. In that it sort of falls between war games and tabletop RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes it immensely interesting to talk about on a show like this.
Yeah, there's a series of games coming out in wargaming that is sort of like a mix of three circles that are all, they rest in the center of those circles. And that is, tabletop RPGs, war games, and board games. It's sort of if you like those three things, and here is a couple of games that'll sit right in that middle point for you, that are playable in super fun short bursts that aren't going to require you to build an army, but also don't require you to read a 20-page document to understand how your class works, while also not being a very complicated to set up board game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It handpicks each piece from those three that really fit. To sell you a really fun experience.
And I would argue Hametsu is no different. Because unlike some tabletop RPGs, where it really differs from there is the lore is quite short. It's not overwhelming. It's just a couple pages in this book. And most of them are from first-person character quotes, journal entries and stuff. But, as always, first thing, the lore pitch. For a reason unknown to all, in the late 16th century on mainland Japan, a portal opened with explosive reverberation. Ripped open was a hole in reality, allowing Oni, monsters from myth and legend, to rampage across mainland Japan. In the aftermath of this event, most villages were destroyed, many cities crumbled, but a few bastions of humanity survived. Within those walls, high influence and power martial families, who were normally at odds with one another, were given a common purpose: to use their knowledge to train warriors to fight these Oni and to keep the cities safe. Now, though, humanity must look beyond the walls, to bigger threats stirring in the forests, and bring the fight directly to them, taking their heads before they can implement their nefarious plans. That's cool. It's just cool.
Yeah. I don't know, if you're a person who likes anime, this is going to sound very much like Attack on Titan, but way cooler in my opinion. If you're into samurai stuff, this is going to be this is going to hit all the notes you want. If you're into just Game of Thrones in a weird way, and going across the wall, it's similar to that. It's just Japanese flavoring, feudal Japan flavoring. There's a lot in here to really like. It sort of leans, it takes a little bit of twists, and then leans heavy into the perceived expectation of what a feudal Japan style game will be, and just lets you have those expectations, and then just provides you an outlet for those expectations.
Yeah, and I think that goes even further because it's a miniatures agnostic game. You could use whatever minis you like. They do make minis for this from Blacksite Studios, the company who makes the game. But you could use anything you like. So if you want your samurai mini to be more anime inspired, more over the top, more fantasy, sure, why not? Have at it. If you want it to look more historical, with historical armor and historical scaling, you could do that too. Why not? Your choice. Have fun. which just increases the level of flexibility that you get to match your flavor.
Yeah, and like everybody knows about samurai. Like let's be honest, everybody knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's seen at least stuff about Demon Slayer.
Yeah.
So like you could sell this to people easily. Like really, you can just like give this to some friends who maybe aren't into this stuff. Maybe you play board games with them. Maybe you play Magic with them, right? Maybe you've played a game of D&D with them, and then get them in with like an easy lore pitch and like a single mini, and have a time. Right?
Yeah, I think the ease of access is a feature here, which we will talk about later. That is, for me, one of the strongest, just because there is so little to have to get over as a hurdle to play the game, which, coming from games like 40K or AOS, is not the case, and a big strength. But I do think the touchstone that everyone understands will be just like samurai flavor and monsters.
Yeah. And like it helps because like unlike a lot of other war games, this is not competitive PvP at all. Like you're not playing against other players. You work collaboratively together to complete missions. So it is either a solo game where you just play by yourself, which like you can do, which is fun. Some people really like that. I like that there are games for those people. But it is also cooperative, where you can have multiple people sitting at a table trying to complete the mission and do the mission together, which is a very board game style like experience. Like that is not a thing that's often the case in war games.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also fun here. Is like you can just straight up sit and play through the game with your friends.
Yeah,
have a great time.
Because truly, the gameplay loop is not all that complicated, and even the mechanics section in the rulebook, which, you know, is sizable. It's 181 pages, but a lot of that is cool art. A lot of those character options, a lot of those are like campaign stuff. The rules themselves are not overly dense. So gameplay-wise, when you actually go to play on the tabletop, what you're going to be doing is you're going to each, like a group of 4 players, or each of you can make 2 characters if you want, or whatever, if there's 2 people. But there's going to be 4 warriors going into the battle, and you get to make those warriors. There's 4 of you, you each get to make 1 from the ground up. You assign their stats, and you pick their school of training that they're from. So the School of Magic, the School of Stealth, the School of Strength, and in the special 4th school, the School of Corruption, if you want to be like spooky and dark. And within those schools, there are classes, and you get to pick one of those classes. So, for example, from the School of Magic, you could be a Bunraku or a monk. From the School of Stealth, there's stuff like Shinobi, there's Geisha. From the School of Strength, there's stuff like Sumo or Ronin or Gaijin, if you want to be like a European plate-mailed warrior. You pick one of those classes. Each sub-faction, well, each school has, I think it's 3 options in it for a class. And you get to pick one. And at level 1, you will get 2 abilities to choose between for that special class that will define how your character is going to start playing. And once you do all of that, you get your starting armor and equipment, and you're ready to go. It's quite simple, it's quite fast, and then you're ready to jump on the table. Once you're on the table, there are predetermined missions with terrain and stuff sort of suggested, but again, it's miniature agnostic. You can do what you want, much like with Rangers of Shadowdeep. You're not locked into anything directly. You use what you got. But there are campaigns that you're probably going to play this through. You can play this as one-shots, but much like with Rangers of Shadowdeep, I think the system loses a lot of the cool factor if you don't play this as part of an ongoing campaign with some friends.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this that's really cool is that you get to level up as a character through 8 levels of abilities that you get to choose, making your character quite unique to you, and trying to avoid injuries and death and get loot and spend money. And, you know, without a campaign, a lot of that just doesn't matter. So you're probably going to play this as a campaign of predetermined missions that you're going to set up and then drop onto the board of. Step 1, you have to investigate to find the monster that you're trying to kill. You know, let's say you were sent out to kill the Black Wolf. Okay, well, we know it's in an area, but where exactly, we don't know. So you'll drop in, in stealth. Your party members are stealth. And on the board are a bunch of Oni, who are sort of like the henchmen, the underlings, the small fries, the little dudes that are on the board with different behaviors they'll be doing. They might be patrolling, they might be guarding a given area, depending on the mission, depending on the setup. And you then have to scour the board, quietly at first, to try to find clues that will either have loot that you can store for post-game, or clues to where the actual monster is hidden. Once you get enough of them, you can summon the monster to appear. However, trying to stop you will be those little underlings, those Oni, who, if they spot you, and there's mechanics around stealth, and there are a lot of abilities, for example, with stuff like Shinobi to try to stop that, to try to prevent that from happening. Once they spot you, combat's on. And the whole board is going to know you're there and start trying to respond to stop you from killing their boss. You're then going to get dogpiled, and if you haven't found all the clues yet, well, that sucks for you. You're going to have to fight off these monsters and find the clues. Which is where it gets awfully helpful to have a kind of diverse party trying to get this job done. So that you can divide and conquer. Once you find the last clue, boss will spawn in. And now the actual fight begins. For people out there who are into Monster Hunter, you know this vibe. All of that other stuff is just the opening act. The real fight is fighting the boss monsters. Who are going to try to murder you in incredible, unique, game-breaking ways. They just shatter the rules because they are the big baddies, and like they have a super card, and super cards can do what they want. And you all are then going to have to try to avoid the henchmen who are going to scamper away and get to the boss to kill them before it murders your whole party. And if you are successful, congratulations. You extract, you've killed the thing, you get XP, good job. If you didn't, that's rough, friend.
Well, make a new character.
Well, maybe. You might also just be permanently injured. There are mechanics for such. You roll.
Oh, cool.
You roll.
I just lost a leg to a massive Oni demon monster. That's it.
That's awesome.
That is quite the story.
I gotta say, that's better than arrows and knees and whatnot. Because afterwards, you make it out, and essentially you do sort of like Rangers, as we described. You tally up the injuries or your death. You roll for loot, you get experience, and then you also check to see if you've leveled up. And if you have, you could progress your incredibly cool Path of Legend. And at each level, all the way up to level 8, there are going to be 2 skills for your particular class that you can choose between. And you can only pick one per level. But every level, you pick one, and they're sort of build-defining diversification points, I guess, if that's the way you put that. But they're the ways that you and another, let's say you're a shinobi and another person is a shinobi in another campaign. Your choices at those levels are what's going to make you unique from one another. With 2 different incredibly cool skills per level, by the time you reach level 8, it's unlikely that you're going to make all the same choices as another person, and your build's probably going to work very differently. And there are also some cool combos that you might be able to find between not only in your own skill tree, but in your party's skill tree. For example, let's say John's playing a shinobi, and he has an ability to like throw a trap to lock an enemy in place to where they can't run away or attack our geisha. And then I'm playing a sumo, so I get the ability that if I attack somebody, I can grapple and chuck them even further. So now they're trapped and they can't move, but also we've thrown them farther away. And we've done like a cool lockdown fastball special combo.
Hell yeah. I've seen this episode of Naruto. Let's go.
I will. Little shout out, max level 8 shinobi ability. One of them, I think it's called Faces of Death, but it's Shadow Clone Jutsu. Like, you get to make copies of your shinobi mini and drop them on the table, and all of you get to like 3-on-1 of whatever monsters you're fighting. It's freaking cool. I'm huge fan. I'd happily paint 3 shinobis just to do that ability one time. And you do that all the way through until your campaign is done, whenever you decide that is.
Yeah.
There are a number of pre-generated missions in this book. There are also monster stats if you want to pre-gen your own missions, and there are a number of community sort of campaigns that I've seen put together online already. So there's stuff out there, but you run it all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Now, our thoughts about the game, pros and cons. Because as John and I
sandwiches like usual, just do a con, then a pro, and then a con, and then a pro, or are we gonna switch it up on
them? Let's do all the cons first. We'll stack them.
All right, cool.
We'll end on high notes. Because as John and I have talked about on the show before, like, no game is perfect. Doesn't exist.
No.
If there was a perfect game, it would dominate the market. And just ain't a thing. Every game design decision you ever make when you're making a game also comes with a drawback. You know, you gain something somewhere, you lose something somewhere else. It is just how it works. And those gains and cuts are going to affect different players differently. So, there's no means are we trying to dunk on any of the games we talk about. It's just we want to be very honest about who this is for and who it might not be for and why.
Mm-hmm.
And this...
Yeah, sometimes these cons are pros for people, too. Like, that's the thing to understand. Like, sometimes people hear a con and go, actually, I really like that.
Yeah. John, throw an example out of a con that is a con, but that you like. Go ahead.
So, I think that's the first con for this game. And that is, like, you're going to play it as a campaign, right? But this is not a game that you're going to play a campaign and then immediately play another campaign. Like, this is not a game that it is wide enough and deep enough to play constantly forever and keep up with for your entire thing. It's a cyclical game. You're gonna play a campaign for maybe like a month, maybe two, and then put it on a shelf and come back to it later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not a thing you're gonna play forever. It just doesn't really have that capability. I mean, I'm sure you can. I'm sure there's people who will. But, like, overall, the way it seems to be structured is that you want to sort of spend a bunch of time playing it for a while, tell, like, a story. Maybe you then put it down for good. That is a possibility. You could always just, like, come back to it in 6 months or 8 months. The replayability is there, but it's there in the sense of, like, you're building characters and playing these missions. Not, we're going to keep playing games and playing games and playing games and playing games and playing games. So, like, for me, that is both a con, right? In that I don't have a game that I can just be like, I'm going to chew on forever. But also a pro, because like, I've got a bunch of games that I'm going to chew on forever. And not everybody wants to be playing war games all year round. Some people play them seasonally. Like, they'll play them in the winter, right? I have friends who will only play board games and stuff like that in the winter when they can't go outside and do stuff. This is great for that. Like, we'll play through we're stuck in a cabin in the woods, snowed in. We're going to play Hametsu for...
That sounds amazing.
For 3 weeks.
Why does that sound like the coolest vacation?
Yeah. But then, like, afterwards, we'll be like, all right, cool.
New Christmas celebration just dropped. Snow Hametsu retreat.
Yeah, like, that's both a con and a pro. And for here, like, for some people are going to hear that and be like, well, I don't want to invest my money in a game that I'm not going to play constantly. Okay. Not for you.
That's fine. You know, if you want, like, a 40K experience where there's all sorts of stuff that you're going to just, like, iterate on it for efficiency for a long time, you're not going to find it here.
Nope.
Same with the level of crunch. You're not going to find it here. And for some people, that's a pro. For me, one that I'll throw out is that it's quite narrow in focus. In that it is specifically made to go into a mission with 4 hunters. And from these 4 schools... And those are your options. You're not getting any broader with it. You don't have to overthink it further. If you are someone who wants just a cornucopia of different choices, you will not find them here. This is just a game that isn't quite scoped for that level of breadth of play.
Yeah.
As I said, there are pre-gen missions in here, but those aren't infinite. And there are community-made things, but those aren't infinite either. So,
yeah, like,
I could see that turning some people off.
Yeah, and I think really, like, the final con sort of sums it all up is that, like, this is a small game from a small company. So if you are expecting to get sort of like 40K or AOS style, like, constant rules drops and updates and like a cyclical cycle of revolving stuff, not here. Not going to happen. No, Not going to get it. It's just not at all. Again, that can be a pro. That can be a con. If you sort of expect a evergreen, constantly evolving experience from your games that you invest in, that's not here. But what it is a pretty solid experience where you go buy a book, print some minis, take some minis you already have, slap them on a table with some cool terrain, and then you can make a little kit, play that, put it back.
Yeah. For me, like, the first pro I would heavily lay out, and we've touched on it before, is that the Path of Legend system is so cool. And there's so many wacky abilities in it that I could easily see myself looking forward to playing another campaign, to try another build. Of just like, oh, I did Shinobi, that was really cool. I did all these crazy things by the end. Next time, I want to see what Sumo does.
Yeah, or the Gaijin, the knight, like I'm gonna play the wandering knight in feudal Japan with my buddy who's playing a shinobi and my other buddy who's playing like a sumo, and we're just gonna tell the goofiest like hangover story. It's great.
You perfect. And I could easily see myself like getting done with the campaign and going, wow, that was really fun. I can't wait to try something new on the next one. And having enough depth in here to get me wanting to try new builds for a long time. For a real long time, despite the narrow scope. Because I'm just that type of person.
Yeah, and like, you touched on it earlier, which is sort of a pro, is like, it has a lot less crunch than other war games. And for me, that like, I love crunchiness, right? Like, Conquest, AOS, 40k, like, but there's a time and a place, right? And I can't constantly play every game as like this hyper crunchy experience, particularly because I like playing games with people, and not everybody likes that experience. Some people want to have a more streamlined, simplified, easy experience that's easy to digest because they don't want to invest all the time and energy for it. This is that. Like, you make a handful of choices, you sit down, you play the game, you can learn the game in less than 10 minutes. You can help someone build a character in less than 10 minutes. You can then have a miniature ready for them, build the table, and be playing the game. Like, this is a game you could start playing on like a Monday night board game night, and then play every Monday night board game night for like 2 months, and be done, right? And have a fun experience, and probably gotten someone to play a war game that wouldn't have played one previously, because it's so easy to do. It's just a very streamlined, easy to do experience. They don't have to worry about rules updates or any of this other stuff. They can just come, play the game, move on. Which is great. Like, for me, that's a big win. And you know, some of those people you show this game to might go, actually, I really like this. I'm going to go pick up a Battletech or a Warcry or a Necromunda or like a yada yada. Like, they'll start branching out, trying things. Right? It's a great entryway. Like, it's a great on-ramp into playing with miniatures on a table with your friends with cool little boards that we all make. Like, maybe have like some train set trees. It'd be great.
Yeah, because I think that's the key. Is like, you're probably not going to use this as a way to get people playing like 40k, right? But as a way to demystify some of the tabletop wargaming stuff and to show that it's not as scary as you might think, at least not all the games are, I think this does an incredible job of just extending a hand to reach people on.
Yeah, especially if you got like young ones. Like, if you got kids, it's a great game.
Truly, it's not mechanically complicated. You could easily get a young kid playing this. I'm talking earlier than teens, like 10-year-olds. Why not? It's not super
especially
hard.
If maybe you're a teacher and you have like a board game club that you help like some kids be able to play board games after school or something, right? Like, we had those when I was growing up. This is a great game for that, right? It doesn't take a ton of time. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of effort. Like, and you can get people involved in like playing cool things and doing like cool stuff really easily. Like, it's a good time.
Who doesn't love that? I think that's an incredible pro in this case. And again, it could be a con, but not for me. And the third and the last one is like the biggest one. Is it's really cool samurai flavor, and I just think that's incredible. It's feudal Japan Monster Hunter. That's what it's, feudal Japan Monster Hunter. And if that doesn't appeal to you, I don't know how better I can pitch it. You get a monster that you have to go kill. You have to go out. You have to hunt for it in the map. You got to avoid the ads. And then you got to kill the big boss fight and see if you make it out the other side. If you replace the boss with an Anjanath, that's a Monster Hunter World mission.
It is. It makes me wonder why there's not a Monster Hunter World, tabletop RPG. Or like...
I'd play it.
Miniatures game. Hell yeah.
But
I'm down.
I'm way in. And this is as close as I've seen. God, it's a cool flavor. There are minis galore. The book is dripping with this flavor. And it's not a flavor that you get very often in miniature war games, which is weird to me. I don't know why it's so rare to get like feudal Japan minis or tabletop war games, but I never see them. Like there's a little skirmish game called Bushido that has this kind of flavor, but I only have seen that online and never in person. It seems to be kind of rare, and you can get the flavor here, though, making this even more appealing for me in a lot of ways. And I imagine I'm not the only one who wants this flavor and can't find it. And that's the best pitch I got. It don't get better than that one. If you aren't excited, but if your brain doesn't make gorilla noises when I said like feudal Japan, Anjanath Hunt, like it's not yours probably. That's fine. That's fine. My brain's making ape sounds right now. And I wish we weren't recording so we could just go play this game.
Yes. Maybe next Friday.
Downside is I don't have feudal Japan terrain for anything.
We both have the imagination of 12-year-olds who just watched The Last Samurai. We'll be fine.
I have a lot of thoughts about that film very quickly.
Yeah.
To save everyone time, I'm not going to share them. Y'all, I get Hametsu might not be for you, but for some of you out there, if you're into Hametsu, it's for Blacksite Studio. We'll put the link below. The rulebook is, I think I got this for $50 or $60. It's not very expensive. And you get a PDF copy with it if you buy it. You could also just buy the PDF, which is much cheaper, obviously. They also have a bunch of terrain for it. They've got pre-made minis for it if you're into it. If it's not a big lift if you really want to try this game. And give it a whirl. But even if you aren't into Hametsu, as always, really the key about this is even if you aren't into this particular small game, I'm hoping that this little mini-series is opening people's eyes that there are a just cornucopia of incredible games out there made by a cornucopia of incredible designers for all types of people, and that there's probably one out there for you that really scratches a particular itch you're into, and maybe in looking at this and seeing if this is for you, and finding out it's not, maybe you'll find something that is for you.
Yeah. Like, you don't have to just look at the big games, right? Like, you can go all over the place. You can try all sorts of stuff and introduce it to people at your local game shop or maybe your local play group, and you'll be amazed about how quickly people will be like, yeah, I'm willing to try something different. Cool, I'm in.
Especially when the lift is one mini for most people. Yeah.
It's like, even just a short break from like your regular scheduled 40K matches, it's something. Like, have a good time.
And if there are things out there you want us to cover that we have not mentioned at all, please leave them in the comments below. If there are games that you think are amazing that are smaller and you want as part of this series, even the ones that we don't play, please share them. I would love to signal boost cool up-and-coming games that deserve a spotlight and don't get it. And if a comment section could help us do that, I'd be real appreciative. Also, the Instagram is open. The email is open. We'd love to hear from you. For now, that's been all of our opinions, bona fide and Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all on the next one.